Hello, everyone. My name is Mirma Tica-Ortiz, and welcome to our peaceful classroom. Our peaceful classroom is a dedicated space where parents, teachers, and other professionals can come together to talk about different ideas on how to promote peace and positivity in the lives of children and in teens. In its real sense, a peaceful classroom is a sacred space where students feel safe, secure, and comfortable in the learning environment. However, there are many things happening around us that affects our own sense of balance, our own sense of peace. When the lockdown was announced in March, no one was ready for the abrupt changes that needed to be undertaken. The private spaces in our homes became the extension of our classrooms, and the plans that we had for the remaining weeks of school literally was tossed out of the window. Face-to-face interactions could no longer be done. The practices where we found comfort and convenience for many years became obsolete. Whether it was asynchronous or synchronous, online learning caused a lot of discomfort, stress, and anxiety. Today's episode will be a discussion on a very essential aspect of well-being, our intellectual wellness. This episode is made especially for teachers who need a little boost to help open their minds to new ideas and experiences to help them through the current situation. But if you are not a professional teacher, please stay on. After all, we all are teachers to anyone who is willing to learn from us. Our protagonist today, Dr. Michele Santos-Alignay, or popularly called Dr. Ichel, earned her PhD in Family Studies at Miriam College, where she is also a lecturer in its higher education unit. Dr. Ichel is a registered psychologist and guidance counselor. She is an author and a sought-out speaker on topics related to parenting in the digital age, adolescent sexuality, midlifing, and many others. To talk about the importance of shifting our mindset towards intellectual wellness, let us listen to Dr. Michele Santos-Alignay.
Hi friends, this is Dr. Michele Santos-Alignay. I'm a family psychologist. And right now, this episode will focus on nourish, meaning intellectual well-being for us teachers. And I know that we can relate with each other. Even though that I am a psychologist, I am also a teacher. I teach in the Department of Psychology and the Family Studies program of Miriam College. But also, I am also one with you in reaching out to people, reaching out to students, reaching out to parents, being a parent myself. And like what we've been having the past months, I know it's very safe to say teachers like us, we had too much. Tama po ba? Do you agree with me that teachers are so tested by the pandemic? We are so tested and challenged by so many things that happen to us all at the same time. Now, just to share with you, when this situation happened, I feel for the teachers because it's almost the end of the school year. And then we suddenly need to change gears. You know, all the preparations for the, I know that school years, the end of it is one of the the busiest season in our lives. And so that having said, when we end the school year, parang biglang nagbago yung lahat. And the more it kinda stresses us, and it's just not kinda, but it actually stresses us. It actually puts a strain with so many aspects of ourselves. And I would like to ask you right here, right now, teachers, we are starting the school year through distance learning, online learning, blended learning, modular type of learning. Whatever it may be, we are not in our classrooms. It is different. So, how are you with it? How are you dealing with all the changes and the challenges that has been happening with us? How are you? My dear teachers, my friends, join me in this session as I go through with you and walk with you. How can we teachers ensure our intellectual wellness? And why is it very critical? Why is it that our intellectual well being is very critical? You know, as I said earlier, we are very much affected by the changes and the crisis, and too many things have happened to us through the past months. I know of some, they just, feel that it's time for me to retire. Other teachers, they feel that they cannot cope. And then other teachers, we just simply need to comply. And with all these things, the three C's, the crisis, the changes, and the challenges, we need to recognize what's happening in our system, what's happening, all these changes, the real life, the virtual platform, the school, our classroom, being on the screen, and of course, supposed to be our very much coveted summer break. It's becoming bleak because we did not have our usual break. And having said that, now that we are all in the middle of the changes, we complied. We may have changed. Too many things has been canceled. And teachers, us parents, everyone who are watching, we are not excused. I know we are all trying our best to cope. And I know we can relate with each other. So I would really like to ask you, what has been happening? What are the intellectual challenges that we have? Before we talk about how can we nourish ourselves, let's reflect first on the challenges happening. One, why did I sum up with this tree? Because I am also, around teachers. Every Saturday, I have this what I call Zoom friends. They are my co-teachers from way back when I was a guidance counselor in the grade school of Miriam College. And these teachers, we are in different parts of the world already. And aside from them, my friends in the profession, either they're with me in the college or outside, everybody in the teaching profession, the educators that I've worked with, they're overwhelmed and even stressed with the changes. Who wouldn't? There's a timeline for what we need to do. There's a timeline that we need to comply with. There's a timeline that we need to produce. And we need to recognize how it has been affecting us. And friends, you need to recognize how has these things have affected you. We need to know teachers, parents, and any adults dealing with students and any family member that is us. We are trying so hard to cope. I repeat that. We are trying hard to cope. Others may cope differently, but others may have difficulty. But we have to cope with all the intellectual or the mental stimulation that we are experiencing the past months. It is not easy. It is not easy to cope, but we experience all this, the overwhelming feeling and the stress with the changes that all the all the all the pandemic related or the effect of the the quarantine situation has brought us. And we have to admit also that we got overloaded and and burnout because of the digital stimulation. Yan yung hindi natin nakitang madalas. But you see, we are always on the screen now. Before, it's the classroom. Now everything is virtual and we have to face screen instead of people. It's really different in the setup that we are working from home. Also, that's why we feel many of us overwork with being at home, but still you have to work on your work, our work. So we have to juggle between the being overworked and the home demand. So please try to reflect. Are you burdened? Are you challenged by all this? The overwhelming feeling and the stress with the changes, overloaded intellectually with all the webinars, with all the Zoom meetings, with all the Hangouts or the Google Meet meeting, or whatever platform you've used. We've exhausted digital means in order to connect, in order to create, in order to upgrade ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, there's nothing wrong because if it's for our own good. But it can get too much. We have to admit that it can get too much. So we also have to check. Maybe we're so burdened with the home and the work demands that we encountered. That's why sometimes we want to say, time out, sobra na. Sumasakit na yung ulo natin. But having that feeling of breaking down, we're having too much. It's too much in the head. It's too much for us. We need to understand that this breakdown will cause us or will allow us to have breakthroughs also. In, in anything that happens negatively, there's always something that we can learn from it. So I would like you to reflect here that we get broken in each season. So in this season of our life, no matter how temporary it may be, if it's a transition for you, or it can also give us lesson. So this season, even though we're broken, even though we're battered, maybe even though we're overworked, we're overstimulated, we're overwhelmed, we get to learn some lessons.
Dr. Echel talks about themes which are posing a lot of risk to teachers' intellectual well-being. First, teachers are stressed and overwhelmed with all that is happening. Teachers may be perceived as superheroes, but we must remember that they are people too, who have many tasks outside their responsibilities as teachers. Teachers may be mothers, fathers, sons, or daughters who have multiple responsibilities at home and are struggling to juggle everything they need to do to make ends meet, keep their family safe, and ensure that their students are receiving the best education. Sadly, many teachers have expressed that the difficulties of the current realities have affected their own well-being. Secondly, teachers, no matter how dedicated and passionate, experience burnout too. In recent months, many teachers have expressed burnout from webinars and digital trainings. All this new information gathered from webinars and digital trainings can make it feel like the head is about to explode. This may cause fatigue, anxiety, and exhaustion, making it difficult for teachers to function well and gain positive perspective to help them boost their well-being. Lastly, teachers over the past months have expressed that they are overworked. The responsibilities have filled their plates to the brim, sometimes even overflowing, making it very difficult to manage their time for school and home responsibilities. Often, efforts are not recognized and taken for granted, making them feel discouraged and undervalued. Dr. Echel highlighted that it is critical that we can access our cognitive faculty for being more aware of the current changes and challenges we face to gain better perception of the crisis and concerns we experience. Having this awareness may improve our mindset in getting information to help and support our needs towards intellectual wellness. Let's now listen to Dr. Chal as she discusses ways to break free from the burdens that affect our intellectual state.
One of the ways that we can start nourishing ourselves is to break free from our thought stressors. And why did I say that? We have to understand to be able to manage the kind of stress that is entering our system. Is work stressful? Is it the content or the burden of the work itself? Is social media becoming too stressful for you also? Maybe it's affecting you more than you know. Is it your mindset that's creating stressful situations for you? We have to recognize that stress normally happens, but stress are normal parts of our lives. Parang baka wala na tayo sa mundong ibabaw kung wala na tayong stress. Pero ang stressors, we have to recognize that these are other matters that adds to the stress. So the pandemic, we can call it a stress in itself, but if we keep thinking of the negative effects and how this pandemic has removed your summer vacation, and you're comparing how it was then to now, and you keep whining and you keep complaining that digital is so hard, then we are adding up to the stressor. Parang sa Tagalog, ito yung nakakadagdag, nakakasulsol sa pakiramdam. So you have to check and reflect in this quotation that I shared with you. In most situations, it is actually our thinking that determines how much stress we actually experience. So let me just tell you, it's not about the stress in itself. It's not about the stress itself, but it's actually about our thoughts about the stressor and how we are dealing with it. Because why am I talking about stress? A lot of our stresses passes through our brain in our intellectual functioning. That's why if we don't take care of our health, if we don't take care of our well-being well, if we allow those stressors to get into us, then it can affect us because stress can affect our whole being, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And do you know where it starts? It starts with the power of our thoughts. Stress can actually determine, as it was said, by how much we, not about what happens to us, but how much about we think and how much about we deal and cope with that kind of stressor. So having said that, you have to reflect, oh, if I keep thinking and I keep overthinking and I keep being burdened and overstimulated by everything that's happening to me, it just might be causing me my lack of sleep. So that's physical. It is making me feel lethargic and stressed from my head to the top to the bottom of my feet. It can also be mentally draining, but it can also be physically draining you. And if you notice, it also affects a lot of our emotions. So you have to check also your emotions. Naiinis tayo, sabihin natin we're so pagod, we're so frustrated with the situation, and many times it drains us spiritually. So actually, stress starts with our heads because that is called internal or intellectual stressors. Kaya we have to understand where is the exact source. It is really the outside or it's really the internal things that's happening. Because as you these things outside us, the external events, we cannot control them. But it's becoming so stressful for us when we try so hard to control it to the point that we cannot function normally. And that is why intellectual stressor is the bigger kind of stress. And we have to learn to, one, be aware of it. Alamin natin, be curious. Is this thought or is this mindset or is this lagi kong iniisip? Is it becoming too much too much for me. And also, we have to be attuned in how it affects us. This is very critical, friends. We have to check how this emotion is being triggered by how we think about something. What do you think about online learning? You have to be aware about what you think about our situation now. Maybe you're resistant. And maybe because of that resistance, you're not aware that it's making you feel frustrated. It's making you keep comparing what happens then and now, and keep being ang hirap-hirap dito. Hindi ako makakop. Ang hirap alamin ng digital. Ayaw makinig ng estudyante. So you have to be aware of the narratives in your head, and you have to be aware of the thought patterns that's always there, because that awareness will help you be attuned on how it is affecting you. Sa kaiisip mo, we are being consumed by the thoughts. And when it consumes us, it affects us. So we have to check, wait, I know na bakit ako lagi nakaka-stress, because there's lack of acceptance to the then and the now. I keep comparing. And if we are attuned with that on how it is affecting us, so I need to let go of all this comparison. I need to let go of the standards then. I need to shift my mindset. And if we are attuned to how it is affecting us, we can say, wait, I need to come up with better solutions. Hindi pwedeng naiinis na lang lagi. Hindi pwedeng puro na lang compare. Hindi pwedeng puro frustration. Because I can work on solutions. This is a breakthrough, friends. If you can recognize, be aware, be attuned, and be mindful of all the internal stressors, then you can be able to understand and manage it. Because it's not actually the external events that will make us, but it's actually the internal response, especially how we think about things and how we do things, that will create a breakthrough for us. And I would like just to have a guideline. You know that prayer for serenity, you may be Catholic or not, but this prayer for serenity, it is used by the Alcoholics Anonymous as their prayer. And it is said that God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. If we keep telling that sa sarili natin, and if we keep praying that, it will help us to tune in our heads intellectually to what we can control at the present moment, because there's just too many things beyond our control, so that we need to know the difference so we can spend better our energy doing something and controlling the things that we can, and let go of the rest. Yan ang pinakamahirap. This is going to be a big breakthrough if we learned how to deal with our internal stressors and let go of the external, those things that are beyond us. And another thing that we can do, aside from understanding our stressors, is that create digital media habits. Why did I say we have to create healthy digital media habits? Because sometimes our stress is aggravated by what we see online. We add to our stress rather than dealing better with it. Yes, it's good to be informed, but it just might be too much for us. So we have to use technology in order to make us better. Sa dami ng ginagawa natin with technology, I also teach about healthy digital media use, but we have to learn how to maximize it. And that I quote from myself, from my writing. While we are using technology to our advantage to be able to gain new knowledge, innovate, and maximize the opportunities it has to offer, we need to acknowledge that teachers and even parents are not wired to be so all the time. We are not wired to be in the classroom virtually. We are not wired to do everything virtually. We are wired for social connections. And the first thing that you should connect with is yourself, to be able to know how to have healthy digital media habits. I If you know about Google well-being, you can actually just type Google well-being. It will help you have healthy digital media practice. They said life, not technology, in it stays front and center. So tayo pa rin. So kahit sabihin natin na nakaka-stress na yung mga online news, nakaka-stress na yung social media use, we are not forced to use it. It's still up to us how to use it. Nakakadagdag pa, nakakapagod yung lahat ng meetings, nakakadagdag sa pagod yung online class. Kaya nga, we should help ourselves to create healthy digital media habits. And if you would see, we have to understand self-care. I'm a sucker for self-care, friends. Naniniwala ako, yung profession natin, we give a lot. Our profession, we give too much of ourselves to our own family, to our friends, community, and of course to our students. So that's why we need to understand self-care. So the first thing, as I said earlier, understand our stressors and then create digital media habits. And in order for us to navigate this difficult time and to nourish ourselves, we have to understand what self-care is. And I would like you to walk with you about self-care because this is very critical on our well-being. It may not be the perfect me time that you know about, but you have to remember self-care is giving value to ourselves to sustain our well-being. I personally learned to value self-care in order for me to navigate a difficult situation, stressful, a difficult uh, scenario or circumstance in my life. But I'm gonna tell you, it's a no-fail formula. I may have still those difficulties, but I keep doing self-care because knowing we have to understand self-care, it's not selfish, but rather a solid path to well-being. Kaya hindi ko nararamdaman na outwitted ako, na masyado kong maraming binigay kasi binibigyan ko yung sarili ko, and that is self-care. We cannot give what we don't have. So it's a proactive way of keeping ourselves recharged so that we can be more effective in being teachers, in being your own parents, in being a nurturer also. You have to nourish yourself to be able to nurture and extend help to other people. What I've always seen is that people think that self-care is just massage, spa, and me time. But for me, it's more than that. Because self-care, it's actually filling in yourself. Hindi ako naniniwala yung pag magulang ka, sabi ng matatanda, pag magulang ka, isusubo mo na lang, ibibigay pa sa anak. Hindi po ako naniniwala doon. Kasi naniniwala ako na kung magulang ka, punuin mo muna yung sarili mo para mabigyan mo yung anak mo. Because we cannot pour from an empty cup. And that's exactly what self-care is. So friends, even though that we are intellectually and overly stimulated, even though that we have so much things in our head, I encourage you to find a self-care strategy that may work for you. We have to quote this. When stressful events and too much information abound us, we have the inner strength and knowledge to deal with matters ahead. Just let me share with this is a personal sharing. I've learned self-care the hard way. When I was full-time working as a guidance counselor, and then I think I was handling 12 sections, and then of course there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of concerns that needs attending to, and then naging nanay pa ako at nagma-master's degree ako noon. Friends, alam nyo, doon ko natutunan kailangan kong alagaan yung sarili ko. I run into my personal burnout. Alam niyo kung bakit? Kasi I had a miscarriage. I was raising my son who's a toddler then. Nakunan ako. Tapos sinabay kong tapusin yung aking master's thesis. Plus, meron pa akong trabahong nag-iintay. Meron akong research na kailangan tapusin. At meron akong mga start of school year concerns that I need to attend to. There's just too much here. And then there's too much here. Yung lahat ng nandito, hindi ko na ibaba sa puso ko. Hindi ko na ilabas. Come October, I don't want to work. It's a personal crisis. I need to undergo my own counseling. Remember, I am a guidance counselor, but I need to seek counseling. I need to seek help. And that's when I realized that I need to value self-care. Sinagad ko yung sarili ko. Ang daming nandito, hindi ko na i-transpose dito. Hindi nagpahinga yung isip, hindi nagpahinga yung katawan, at hindi rin nagpahinga yung aking nararamdaman. There's just too much. I know we have those moments. It may be big, it may be smaller. Friends, crisis in life may come and go. Maybe it's not about the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe it's a personal battle. Maybe it's a relationship issue. Maybe you are going through your own difficulty. Maybe it's a financial concern. But whatever we are going through, whatever stressful events or mental stimulation we may get, we have the inner strength and knowledge to deal with matters ahead if we know how to pause, if we know how to take care of our well-being, if we prioritize our own well-being. So how can we establish intellectual self-care strategies? As I said, it starts with our heads. So unahin natin yung ating naiisip kasi andyan lahat, loaded. Friends, hawakan nyo nga yung utak nyo because baka masyadong maraming nandyan. Baka nabibigatan na and then it's too much for you. Our thoughts become our world. Whatever it is in our head, it gets to affect our emotion. It affects our actions, our decisions, and even our relations. That's the power of our thinking. So we have to be responsible in nourishing our intellectual well-being, friends. Nobody will do it for you. Nobody will tell you, tumigil ka muna. Ay, sikasuhin mo muna sarili mo. Walang ganyan, friends. We are all old enough to understand that our well-being starts with us. You have to nourish your intellectual well-being so we can be more effective in the many roles that we play, especially in doing our work, our mission, and in our life passion. So let me give you practical tips, okay? So for us to nourish ourselves and to be intellectually well. The first one, learn and engage in creative pursuit. Huwag niyong maliitin ang lettering. Huwag niyong maliitin ang coloring book. Pagiging plantita, starting with paint by numbers. Don't belittle those things because these creative pursuits gives us a balance, give us, we can create new things. We can do new ways of doing things. So, sabi nga, distraction, hindi. Kasama siya. So, kahit na sabihin mo na ang self-care mo ay mag-video, okay? O kaya naman manood ng Netflix, wag ka lang magpapakapuyat dahil hindi self-care yon. Please do something, a hobby, an interest that will make you feel alive. That's the goal of that. Kaya yung life-giving activities, listening to good music, read self-help books, motivational podcast. I have my own podcast in Spotify. So listen to this things that uplifts you and do things. I'll add to it life-giving activities. You know yung mga scents because it uplifts our mood. Nature. Going to nature, hindi mo kailangan magbundok, hindi mo kailangan magdagat. Maybe even just, looking at the sky, the sunset, the sunrise, and looking at the clouds, or even just walking in your streets with the trees around you. That's self-care in itself because it's creating that connection with life-giving activities and with nature that can be life-giving to you. So engage in these creative pursuits, engage in life-giving activities. That these are ways for you to be nourished. And another area, have a gratitude mindset. Alam nyo, importante yan. We're talking about intellectual well-being. The tendency of us, our tendency as individuals, as persons, ang nakikita natin yung mali, yung wala, yung kulang. Ay, hindi na tayo makakapagpasko the way we did before. Ay, hindi na tayo nakapagbakasyon ng summer. Ay, paano kaya sa ganyan? Ay, paano kaya? We have to park those thoughts because it's not becoming helpful. What we can have is develop a gratitude mindset. Gratitude and worry or remorse cannot exist on the same plane. When we have that gratitude mindset, we think of the things that we are grateful about. Make a mental list, or better yet, make your own list of the things that we are grateful for today. What are you grateful for today? Let me make a list for myself. I'm grateful for work. I'm grateful of the financial blessings, maybe big or small. I'm grateful that I am safe at home with my family. I'm grateful my kids are learning well online. It may not be the best conditions, but they're happy. And I'm grateful that I am reaching out to people through the work that I have. I have a mission to help. Those enough can empower me, even though in my lowest of days, this solution works. That is caring for your needs. Another thing, we can do intellectual self-care or mental self-care by reframing our thoughts. Kung ito yung frame, kaya ng phone, i-reframe mo. Kung laging nakaganito, itaas natin. Ibig sabihin, let's change the way we look at things. We look at the other side of the picture, and sabi nga, we look at the silver lining. And if you try to reframe your thoughts, you look at something good in the situation. If negative thought patterns is too much, yan yung laging nandyan sa isip mo, paulit-ulit yung mga negative thoughts, try to look at it. If you look at the pandemic as a burden, maybe there's a blessing behind it. Diba? If you look at pandemic na ang dami niyang kinuha sa atin, maybe reframing our thoughts will make us see marami siyang kinuha, but it allowed us to see what is more important. What are the things that really matters? When we look at it na, oh, my life is a mess, but maybe there's a message and there's a mission to be told after that mess. When we look at, oh, this is really a big burden, maybe there's a blessing behind it. We may not know now, but we will know later. That's reframing our thoughts. It's not toxic positivity. We're not just saying, hindi, positive vibes lang, good vibes lang, and happy lang dapat lagi. No, reframing our thoughts is acknowledging that there is a negative situation, but looking at it differently. And there is hope in the future and compassion with ourselves at the present moment. Hindi ba self-care yon? That compassion for ourselves. And more importantly, friends, this really worked for me. Have quiet time. Teachers, friends, I know you had too much. Naiinis ako sa mga tao when they tell na ang parents na daw ngayon yung teacher. No, they just don't only know how much was asked and demanded from us the past month. So please, please, please do not fail to have your quiet time, even though there's too much on your list, too much in our plate, too much roles that we have to play. Have a quiet time. It can be your time for reflection, prayer, and meditation. It can be just a time to just do nothing. It can be a time for you to exercise, to reflect, to just write. Let yourself be. Do not judge whatever you have. Kung ang Tagalog niyan, minsan kailangan mo lang tumingin sa wala, tumunganga, or just to connect with yourself and to connect with your God. That is quiet time. That is me time, and that is self-care time. Does it work? I just did it yesterday. That's why I can give more to you today.
Dr. Michele mentions many ways to help break free from factors that challenge our intellectual state. In her talk, she highlights Dr. Pamela Hayes' definition of stress, and she says that stress is the internal feeling or condition experienced by a person when they perceive that the situation is beyond their ability to cope. While there are external stressors like abuse, natural disasters, and the pandemic that we are experiencing right now, there are internal stressors, our thoughts, which is one of the major stressors we all are challenged with. Our thoughts, if not managed, can affect our physical, mental, intellectual, and emotional state. We must remember that taking charge of our thoughts is key to breaking free from stress within our control. Dr. Ichel shares a beautiful prayer that we can recite when things don't go our way. The Serenity Prayer that goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The prayer is very appropriate when we want to help ourselves calm our mind to break free from thoughts that stress us. It encourages us to accept, understand, and discern. A tip that Dr. Ichel gave us earlier is that when stress comes, reflect on the Serenity Prayer. To break free from challenges, teachers are also encouraged by Dr. Ichel to examine their digital habit. Spending too much time on online or on screen can cause fatigue. And she shares with us some reminders from Google. So number 1, focus your time with technology. Number 2, unplug more often. Number 3, minimize distractions. And number 4, balance time as a family. Dr. Ichel also adds number 1, choosing the appropriate social media influences and the right platform that add positivity. Number 2, do digital detox. To clear our heads from all the information gathered, digital detox is important. And lastly, number 3, learn more self-care activities that will benefit our overall well-being. Dr. Ichel gives emphasis that self-care is important and that it shouldn't be seen as a selfish gesture. When we take care of ourselves, we are able to improve our mental state. By having our own self-care strategy, this allows us to recharge so that we become more effective in the various work we do. Taking care of ourselves allows us to have the power to be able to gracefully pass through stressful events that come our way. Allow me to go back and highlight what Dr. Ichel suggests as self-care strategies to help our intellectual well-being. Number 1, she says, learning and engaging our creative pursuit is important. Learning and engaging our creative pursuit means picking up a new hobby, learning a new skill, or honing our God-given talent to enrich our creativity. Number 2, pursue life-giving activities. What gives you life? This can be listening to good music, reading a self-help book, or listening to a motivational podcast. Do something that gives you life. Number 3, have a gratitude mindset. Make it a habit to count your blessings, whether big or small. Cultivating this practice can have a great impact on improving your mindset. Number 4, reframe your thoughts or reframe your thoughts. Take a step back to process before jumping into conclusion that creates stress. Number 5, give yourself some quiet time to reflect, pray, or meditate. These are very practical tips we can do to help break free from the challenges to our intellectual well-being. Let's continue to listen to Dr. Ichel as she talks about reaching our breakthroughs.
And let me just cap this session with this quote: from brokenness to breakthrough. As I said earlier, we get broken in each season, but each season has a lesson. We get broken each season, but each season has a lesson. Bakit ko po sinasabi yan? As I said earlier, this situation of ours, this experience of ours is both a filter and a teacher. So it would be good for us to see what lessons is it teaching me. Gusto natin ang estudyante natin laging natututo. Intellectually, we want to make sure that they are filled. Intellectually, we want to make sure that they get the best. But teachers, friends, huwag niyo pong kuriputan yung sarili niyo. We can always learn content. We can always learn new researches. We can always learn new activities to be able to bring our lessons out. And that is so good. Pero don't forget, look at yourself, look at your circumstances. What can you learn from it? What lessons is etched in your heart? What's etched in your mind? And what lesson can you carry with you to be able to help you in this trying time and to be able to carry you through in the future? I said it's not gonna be an easy life. There will always be challenges. There will always be changes. There will always be breakdowns. But friends, there may be brokenness, but there can always be breakthrough. We can have the nourishment that we need if we know how to sit down and how to care for our needs, because it depends on us. It's our responsibility so that our intellectual well-being will be well. It will affect the other areas of our lives. When we take care and enrich our intellectual wellness, it can affect our emotions, it can affect our actions, it can affect our decisions, and we can learn the life lessons that we need to learn along the way. I hope that this session has blessed you to be able to nourish yourself. And remember, it's your responsibility. This is Dr. Michele Alignay. I hope that these lessons you can carry with you in the classroom, at home, in life, and out. God bless you all.
To break through from the challenges to our intellectual well-being, she gives us practical tasks we can do to help build a positive mindset. The first task she calls My Source of Stress. She invites us to reflect on the common sources of stress we encounter and to think about the posing risks these stress have on our well-being. It's best to write this down so that we can write this down in our journal or in our notebook or anywhere that we have access to. And after identifying the common source of stress and how this affects our well-being, she invites us to go back to identify possible action points so we can consider to addressing these. She invites us to use the Serenity Prayer as our guide. Task number 2 she calls Time for a Tech Check. Here, you are to examine how you have been affected, whether positively or negatively, by being online. It would be helpful if you can create 2 columns, one for the positive effects and the other for the negative effects. After identifying these, write your action points on what you can do to ensure your digital well-being. And lastly, number 3, she calls this self-care for mind care. As teachers, it is important to learn to make self-care a priority. Remember, self-care is not a selfish gesture. She suggests that teachers make a 10-item list of simple self-care strategies. In your list, choose activities that refresh you intellectually and recharge your spirit. It is important to make it simple, sustainable, and self-enriching. Now remember that consistency is key. Do it weekly and reflect on how it affects your overall state of well-being. I hope these tasks to help create your own breakthroughs was helpful. Let me end with a quote from Mr. Albert Einstein. He says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them." That's all for today. Once again, my name is Mirma Tica-Ortiz. See you again next week here at our sacred space, our peaceful classroom.
Are you glued to your phone 24/7? Is it the first thing and the last thing that you check in bed? Do you find yourself so stressed out with the news, but you can't seem to look away? I think these are the common challenges that we all face today when using social media. The internet and social media channels have definitely changed the game. It changed the way we live our lives, from consuming content, purchasing items, and even doing social activism. It definitely has its perks because we can finally connect with people wherever they're from, and we can build our social communities. However, just like with anything else, we need to be mindful of how we use it. So allow me to share with you a couple of thoughts and tips how we can use social media better, and we can finally take back our time. We need to remember that social media platforms are built on the currency that is our attention. We get to use it for free because of advertising. Now, that is not necessarily a bad thing because small and medium enterprises or mom and pop shops can definitely use the scale, particularly during this trying time when they need traction for their businesses. However, being aware that it's designed to keep us glued and generate reactions, whether good or bad, will help us build some safeguards on how to use these channels better. Do you find yourself picking up your phone whenever it sends you a notification? Do you somehow fidget when it rings or pings? If the answer is yes, then maybe we need to turn off our notifications. These seemingly small things are luring us even if we don't have any real purpose for opening our accounts. Notice that when we pick up our phones, we spiral down into the black hole that is our news feed. By turning off our notifications, we become more mindful and purposive in using our social media accounts. One of my favorite things in social media is following accounts that help me expand my mind. So these could be your authors, artists, or people who just have new way of thinking. But don't get me wrong, I also have a fair share of my guilty pleasure accounts. These are your pet accounts, meme, or even parody. But I do make it a point to check that I have a healthy balance of informative accounts and guilty pleasure ones. So think of it as like a classic grow, glow, and go types of food. If you think or if you notice that your feed is just full of sugar, quote and unquote, then maybe it's time to prune your accounts or edit the accounts that you're following. It's also the same with accounts that insinuate negative feelings such as anxiety, fear, or anger. Having an awareness on how these accounts affect us emotionally and mentally can help us manage our scrolling better. With all the controversial political events that are happening right now, it's so easy to fall into the trap of commenting negatively towards someone, like a stranger, when they don't share the same beliefs that we do. This is one of the darker sides of social media. Because again, we need to remind ourselves that these platforms are built for engagement and reaction, whether they're good or bad, real or fake news. Before we send or before we type a scathing, angry comment, let's start asking ourselves, will this change a narrative? Will this change their mind or their stand? Probably not. Because these types of conversations happen behind the keyboard. Which brings me to my last point. One bad news after the other, it's so easy to find ourselves hopeless and defeated. We even find ourselves airing these grievances in social media just to find comfort and refuge. The more people who empathize, the better. Again, social currency is engagement and reactions. But with the search for community and refuge, we often forget that belongingness and meaning are not founded on likes and comments, but on intentional conversations with people behind the keyboard. We can do this by being intentional and making time for people within our circles. Sending messages like, "How have you been?" or "Is there anything I can do to support?" can definitely mean the world to someone who is struggling, whether we know it or not. Let's remember that we don't have to be content creators or influencers to spread hope and optimism. We can do these things and more within our own backyards. Thank you for watching, and I hope you pick up a thing or two. And I hope that we can start using our social media platforms better from now on. Take care and stay safe always.